I'm Alex, and I thought escaping the city at night would be easy. Then I saw Mara and Eli, and realized we were being hunted by something that doesn't stop, doesn't breathe, and doesn't forgive. If you hear footsteps behind you, don't turn, run. I didn't notice it at first. The subtle feeling, the almost imperceptible presence that lingered just beyond my vision. I had left the crowded streets of the city, the noise and lights fading behind me, and I turned into a narrow alleyway that twisted between abandoned buildings. The air was heavy and damp, carrying a smell of rot and rust that made my stomach churn. My footsteps echoed sharply against the cracked concrete, louder than they should have been, as if the alley itself was amplifying them. Every time I glanced back, the alley was empty, silent, but the hair on the back of my neck stood straight. I couldn't shake the sensation that I wasn't alone, that something was following me, waiting for me to falter. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just a trick of my imagination, but the feeling refused to leave. My heart started pounding in my chest, each beat louder than the last, and I felt a tightness in my throat, a pressure that made it hard to breathe. Then I saw it. A figure crouched in the darkness at the end of the alley, just beyond the weak glow of a flickering streetlight. It didn't move, but its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, staring at me. I froze, my body betraying me with sudden cold sweat. My mind screamed, telling me to run, but curiosity and fear rooted me in place, and when I blinked it was gone, vanished as if it had never been there. I forced myself to move, taking careful steps at first, but the instinct to run overwhelmed me and I bolted. My legs pumped faster than I thought possible, my lungs burning with each desperate gasp. The alley seemed to stretch endlessly, shadows twisting and writhing as if they had their own intent. Every corner I turned revealed more darkness, more shapes lurking just out of sight. I wanted to believe I could outrun it, but a deep, icy dread clawed at my chest. I couldn't tell if I was being hunted or if I was running from something I couldn't understand. Then I saw the footprints, small, uneven, dragging across the dusty alley floor, leaving marks like claws had been torn through the concrete. They didn't match mine. My blood ran cold as I realized they were following me, keeping pace, though I hadn't slowed. Each step I took seemed to echo with an answering step behind me, a rhythm I couldn't escape. I tried to convince myself that I was imagining it, that exhaustion and fear had twisted my senses, but the evidence was there, undeniable. The alley ended at a chain-link fence rusted and covered in weeds, and I pounded against it, desperate for an exit. I glanced back one last time and froze. The figure was there again, emerging from the shadows, its face hidden, its movements deliberate and unhurried. It didn't run. It didn't need to. It just waited, watching, grinning with something I couldn't see but could feel in my bones. And at that moment, I understood. I would never be able to outrun it. I ran without thinking, legs burning, lungs screaming. But the city around me had changed. The familiar streets seemed twisted, unfamiliar, like I had stumbled into a place that mirrored reality, but warped it, bending it into something cruel and unnatural. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the cracked pavement, flickering with shapes that seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them. I tried to calm my racing thoughts, tried to convince myself that it was just fear, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But the truth was undeniable. I was being followed, hunted, and the distance between me and whatever it was shrank with terrifying speed. I darted into an old park, hoping the trees and darkness could conceal me, thinking perhaps I could lose it in the maze of swings and broken pathways. The cold wind whispered through the branches, carrying the faint scent of decay. The park should have been peaceful, abandoned as it was, but the silence was suffocating, heavy with something unseen. Every crunch of leaves under my feet sounded deafening. Every movement in the corner of my vision made my stomach drop. Every shadow felt alive. I ran faster, ignoring the scrapes and cuts my palms and knees collected from stumbling over broken benches and jagged concrete. Then I noticed the leaves themselves. They weren't just falling, they were moving. Sliding across the ground toward me, twisting unnaturally, leaving streaks of wet darkness behind. I stumbled back, fear clawing at my throat. My eyes darted around frantically, searching for the source, for a way out, but the park seemed endless. The wind carried a soft, rhythmic sound now, like footsteps, but faster, too light for any human. I spun in every direction, desperate to find the source, but saw nothing. The shadows of the trees lengthened and writhed, stretching toward me, bending as if they were alive, stretching their dark fingers in my direction. I pressed myself against a large tree trunk, hoping it could shield me, and that's when I saw it, or rather something that shouldn't exist. My shadow, cast by the faint light of the moon, moved wrong. Its movements didn't match mine. It stretched, contorted, twisting in ways no human shadow should. And in the corner of my eye, I saw another shadow, mirroring mine perfectly, except it wasn't attached to my body. It crouched and stretched in ways my shadow never would, sliding closer and closer along the ground as if it were stalking me. I wanted to scream, but my voice failed. My chest heaved as panic flooded me. My legs refused to obey at first, paralyzed by terror. Then the instinct to survive surged through me, and I bolted again, weaving between trees, stumbling over roots and debris. The shadows followed relentlessly, crawling, stretching, whispering with some unearthly rhythm I couldn't decipher. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. And just as I thought I might finally escape, I tripped and fell into a small clearing. The shadows surrounded me, forming a circle that pressed in closer and closer. The last thing I saw before I scrambled to my feet again was one of the shapes leaning toward me, its face, or the idea of a face, twisted and pale, hollow-eyed, grinning, silent. And I realized, with a sick twist of understanding, that wherever I ran, I would never be alone. I burst out of the park and into the streets again, hoping the city lights and people would offer some sense of safety. But everything was wrong. The streets looked familiar, yet distorted, stretched in impossible ways, like the city itself had been reshaped into a trap. Neon signs flickered erratically, casting fractured colors across the pavement. Some of the signs blinked words I didn't recognize, symbols that seemed to twist and leer at me. Cars passed silently, empty, their dark windows reflecting my panic back at me, and for a moment I wondered if the city had swallowed its people. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but I kept moving. Every alleyway seemed to narrow as I ran past, bending inward, trying to funnel me into some unseen corner. I felt it again, the presence that had been behind me since the alley, the shadow that never blinked. Every instinct screamed to look back, to confirm that it was there, but terror made my eyes freeze forward. I knew that if I looked directly, it might be the last thing I ever saw. Then I noticed the doors. I passed one after another, hoping to find refuge, but each led somewhere impossible. One opened into a brick wall. Another opened into a dark tunnel that seemed to descend endlessly. The world had become a labyrinth, and I was its prey. I tried to avoid the reflections in windows and puddles, but my gaze kept catching them, distorted versions of myself that seemed to twist and writhe independently. My own reflection was not alone. It moved, slithered, grimaced with a mocking expression I couldn't understand. I stumbled and fell onto the pavement, scraping my palms and knees, and that's when I saw it. Words written on the ground in a dark, wet substance. My own blood, or something that looked like it, formed letters that glistened in the flickering light. Run, run, run. Each step I took left my heartbeat pounding against my ears. My vision tunneled, and the air grew colder, sharper, more solid. I could feel it breathing behind me, a cold, wet exhalation brushing against the nape of my neck, but every time I spun, nothing was there. Then I noticed the alley walls, their surfaces shifting, alive. The cracks grew wider, twisting like veins, and tiny, clawed hands emerged, dragging themselves along the bricks. I scrambled back, kicking at them, but they didn't retreat. The walls seemed to pulse, breathing, expanding, trying to trap me in their twisted embrace. Panic overtook me completely. I ran blindly, my senses overwhelmed, unable to distinguish reality from nightmare. I didn't stop until I found myself in a subway entrance, its dark stairwell promising escape. But the air inside was thick, heavy, clinging to my skin. The tracks gleamed wetly in the dim light, slick with a substance that reeked of decay. I heard the train before I saw it, a screeching roar that shook the walls. But when I looked, there was nothing. The tracks stretched endlessly, spiraling into darkness, and I realized I was no longer above ground. I was already trapped. And then I felt it, a touch, cold and deliberate, on my shoulder. I spun, heart in my throat, and the empty tunnel stared back at me. Only it wasn't empty. Somewhere in the shadows beyond my vision, I knew I was being watched, hunted. And I understood, with the icy grip of terror, that no matter how far I ran, the chase had only just begun. I didn't know how long I had been running. Hours? Days? Time seemed meaningless now. The city had vanished behind me, replaced by an endless expanse of darkness. The subway tunnel stretched endlessly ahead, the tracks slick with something thick and black, and the air felt colder, sharper, like it was cutting into my lungs. Each step I took echoed with a hollow, mocking sound that wasn't my own. My legs burned, my muscles screamed, but the instinct to run overwhelmed everything else. And then I saw it, standing, or hovering, just ahead. Its face was pale, cracked like old clay, eyes hollow and black, mouth stretched in a silent scream. It didn't walk. It didn't need to. It floated above the tracks, moving slowly, deliberately, like a predator that already knew I couldn't escape. I froze, my chest tightening, terror rooting me to the ground, but the instant I tried to take a step backward, the ground behind me shifted. The tracks themselves seemed to ripple, bending, twisting, stretching toward me as though the tunnel had grown fangs. I forced my legs to move, running again, my shoes slipping on the wet, sticky tracks. The sound of something scraping against metal echoed through the tunnel. Sharp, grating, inhuman. I glanced down, expecting to see a train barreling toward me, but there was nothing. Only the tracks spiraled endlessly into darkness, the black liquid glistening under the faint, flickering lights that clung desperately to life. Then I noticed the hands. Pale, thin, clawed, rising from the tracks themselves, stretching toward me with long, deliberate movements. They dragged across the floor, scraping the walls, reaching for me in a silent, patient hunger. I stumbled over the tracks, heart hammering, trying to outrun what I couldn't even fully see. Every instinct screamed that I should keep moving, but my mind whispered that there was nowhere to go, that the tunnel itself had become alive, sentient, and it was closing in. I turned a corner, or what I thought was a corner, and found myself in a chamber of rusted metal, the walls lined with old maintenance doors. I tried opening them, hoping for a refuge, but each one led to darkness, some swallowing the light entirely, others filled with shapes writhing and shifting just beyond my vision. I slammed a door shut behind me, and the sound echoed, but it wasn't enough. The presence was closer now, surrounding me. A whisper touched my ears, so soft I could barely hear it, yet it was unmistakable. My name. The voice, or voices, slithered through my mind, curling into my thoughts, urging me to turn. My heart threatened to explode. I wanted to scream, but my voice had been stolen by fear long ago. The pale figure hovered at the edge of my vision, and I realized that it wasn't alone. Shadows began detaching from the walls, from the tracks, forming multiple figures with the same hollow faces, the same silent, grinning mouths. I ran again, desperate, slipping in the black liquid, lungs heaving, hearing hundreds of whispers now, all echoing my name, surrounding me. The tunnel seemed to bend around me, walls tightening, darkness reaching, and then I felt it, Hundreds of cold, wet touches brushing across my skin, crawling along my arms, legs, back, like the tunnel itself wanted to swallow me whole. My mind screamed, but there was no way out. The chase was unending, relentless. And then I saw the light, a faint glimmer at the end of the tunnel, almost like escape. Relief surged for a split second before I realized the light wasn't a way out. It was an eye. A massive, unblinking eye staring down the tunnel, reflecting my terror back at me, and I understood. I was not running from it. I was running into it. I don't know if I ever reached the end of that tunnel. At some point, the floor beneath my feet no longer felt solid. The air grew thicker, colder, as if I was running through a nightmare instead of a place. My breath came out in ragged gasps, my chest burning, but I couldn't stop. The light, no, the eye, still glowed faintly ahead, blinking slowly, its massive pupil following my every step. The sound of the whispers had stopped, replaced by a low hum that vibrated through the walls and into my bones. I wasn't sure if it was real anymore. Nothing felt real. Then, without warning, the floor vanished. I fell hard, my body slamming into concrete. Pain exploded through me, and when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the tunnel anymore. I was lying on a street, the same street where everything began. The city was alive again, neon lights flashing, cars moving, people walking past as if nothing had happened. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped. I wanted to believe I had. My body shook uncontrollably, but I forced myself up, trying to steady my breathing. The air felt lighter here. Normal. Too normal. But something wasn't right. The people moving past me didn't look at me, not even once. Their faces were pale, expressionless, their eyes glazed as though they were sleepwalking. I tried to move among them, but the crowd parted perfectly around me without ever acknowledging I was there. My footsteps didn't echo anymore. My reflection in the shop windows didn't move with me. It stayed still, watching me with hollow eyes. I stumbled into an alley to catch my breath, trying to understand what was happening. The walls looked familiar. The same cracked bricks, the same flickering light, the same faint smell of rot. I turned slowly, my pulse quickening. My reflection from the window was now standing at the end of the alley, staring back at me. I couldn't see its face clearly, but I knew it was smiling. I tried to step back, but my body refused to move. My limbs felt heavy, unresponsive, like they didn't belong to me anymore. The reflection started walking forward, its movements precise, deliberate. Every step it took matched the pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. When it finally stood inches away, I realized it wasn't a reflection at all. It was me, or what was left of me. Its skin was pale, its eyes black and bottomless, its smile stretched too wide. It leaned close, so close I could feel the cold air radiating from it. For a moment I thought it would speak, but instead, it stepped forward, into me. I gasped, the air around me collapsing inward. Everything went silent. The city froze. My heart pounded once, twice, then slowed. I looked around, but no one moved anymore. The lights flickered and went out one by one, leaving me in complete darkness. I could still see my shadow on the wall, long and stretched, even without light. Then it smiled, and I understood the truth. I never escaped. I never stopped running. Whatever it was, I had become it. And now, somewhere out there, something else has started running too.